Most people do not have a Social Security problem. They have a timing problem. They stand in front of one of the strongest lifetime income machines they will ever own. And they pull the lever without understanding how the machine is built, what makes it stronger, and what mistakes lock in a smaller check for the rest of their lives. I have watched people work 30 and 40 years, save responsibly, invest faithfully, and still treat Social Security like a simple form they fill out at the end. That is not what it is. Social Security is a formula, it is a sequence, it is a machine with a few major levers. If you understand those levers, you can often raise the size of your benefit, raise the safety of your retirement income, and make better decisions for your spouse and for the surviving spouse, who may one day depend on that check more than either of you expects. If you do not understand those levers, you can make a permanent mistake in an afternoon. That is what makes this so important. I want to show you the way I think about it. When I look at Social Security, I do not see a government benefit first. I see a lifetime cash flow machine with inflation protection attached to it. For most households, that is an extraordinarily valuable asset. In many cases, it is the best inflation, adjusted guaranteed income stream they will ever own. And like any valuable asset, it pays to understand how it is priced, how it is calculated, and how to avoid selling it too cheaply. The first thing you need to understand is that the machine is not emotional. It does not care that you worked hard. It does not care that you were tired. It does not care that your coworker claimed at 62 and told you to do the same thing. It runs on math. The machine begins with your earnings record, every year you worked, and paid Social Security tax. The system kept score, but it did not keep score on every dollar without limit. There is a wage cap. Above that cap, extra wages do not increase the calculation. The cap moves over time, but the principle is the same. The machine only counts wages up to the taxable maximum. Above that, the lever stops moving. Then comes the second layer, and this is where many people get lost. The machine does not simply line up your raw earnings and average them. It adjusts many of your earlier working years for wage inflation. In plain English, it tries to make old dollars comparable to newer dollars. A modest income from decades ago may count for more than people assume once it is indexed forward, but that adjustment only happens up to age 60. After that, later earnings go in at face value. So the machine is not just recording what you made, it is translating what you made into a comparable language across time. Then the machine does something ruthless and elegant. It takes your 35 highest earning years, not your favorite years, not your most recent years, not the years when you worked the hardest, your highest 35 years. This is where the first name mechanism appears, and I want you to remember it. I call it the 0-year drag. If you worked fewer than 35 years, the machine does not shrug and say, that is fine. It inserts zeros. Those zeros get averaged right along with everything else. A person with 30 strong years does not get rewarded for having 30 strong years. That person gets penalized for 5 missing years. 5 zeros can pull down an average more than people realize, and once you understand that, you stop saying, I worked a long time. You start asking a better question, did I give the machine a full set of years? I have always liked businesses with simple economics. Social Security has simple economics. Once you strip away the fog, 35 years, highest earnings, missing years become zeros. That is not a slogan. That is structure after the system takes those 35 years. It adds them up and divides by 420 months. That gives you what is called average indexed monthly earnings. That number is the machine raw fuel. It is not yet your benefit, but it is the monthly earnings figure the machine uses to begin shaping your check. Then comes the conversion layer, which is another piece most people never learn. The machine does not replace all dollars equally. It uses what are called bend points. The first layer of your average monthly earnings gets a very high replacement rate. The next layer gets a lower rate. Dollars above the second bend point get replaced at an even lower rate. In other words, this machine is progressive by design. Lower earners get a larger percentage of income replaced. Higher earners still benefit, but each extra dollar of recorded earnings produces a smaller marginal increase. Once you move up the ladder, that leads to the second name mechanism. I call it the replacement ladder. The Social Security machine is a ladder, not a flat table. The first rungs matter more. The next rungs still matter, but less higher up the ladder. The machine is still paying attention, but it is not paying attention with the same generosity. That matters, because it changes how you judge the value of extra work and extra earnings. One more high-earning year can still help. Replacing a weak year with a strong one can help. Replacing a zero can help even more. But not every extra dollar moves the machine equally. If you understand that, You make smarter decisions about whether another work year is buying you something large, something modest, or almost nothing at all. Now we come to the lever that gets the most attention, and rightly so, claiming age. This is the part that makes people emotional, because it feels like a bet against your own life expectancy. But you should not begin with emotion. You should begin with economics. Your primary insurance amount is essentially what the machine promises at full retirement age. Claim before that age and the check is permanently reduced. Delay beyond that age and the check rises roughly 8% per year until age 70. That increase is not a maybe. It is embedded in the machine. So when someone claims at 62 instead of waiting until 70, they are often locking in a much smaller inflation, adjusted lifetime income stream. This is the third named mechanism. I call it the delay multiplier. The delay multiplier is powerful because it improves not only this year's check, but every future inflation adjustment that sits on top of that check. A larger starting number gets a larger inflation, adjusted stream over time. People look at the choice and think they are only comparing this month to that month. They are not. They are choosing the size of a lifelong inflation-linked base. That is why I say Social Security is not just income. It is architecture. A weak decision at the base gives you a smaller house forever. A strong decision at the base gives you a sturdier house forever. Now, I want to say something very important because serious planning is never one size fits. All delay is not automatically correct for every person. If you have poor health, if you need the income, if household cash flow is tight, if other assets are limited, the right answer may be different. But the mistake most people make is not that they analyze too much. The mistake is that they analyze too little. They hear one slogan, usually from a friend, and they permanently sell a valuable income machine at a discount. I do not like selling good assets cheaply. You should not either. The fourth lever is one that sounds painfully obvious until you understand how often people ignore it. Increase your earnings while the machine is still paying attention. If you are in your 50s or 60s and earning more than you did earlier in life, those higher earning years can replace lower years in the formula. One year may not create a miracle. Several years can create a meaningful lift. Think about a worker who once had a weak year in the top 35 and now earns much more. The machine is not sentimental. It will happily push out the weaker year and keep the stronger one that can raise the average, which raises the eventual benefit. I call this the replacement swap. The replacement swap is one of the cleanest ways to improve the machine. If you are still working and your current earnings are strong, replace weak years with better years, replace zeros with real years, replace old low output inputs with new high output inputs. People often ask whether one more year matters. The better question is, what is that year replacing? If it replaces a zero, it matters a great deal. If it replaces a very low year, it may matter quite a bit. If it replaces an already strong year and your earnings are not much higher, the effect may be modest. Again, the machine rewards precision, not vague optimism. The fifth lever becomes critically important once marriage enters the picture. Most people think about Social Security as if it belongs to an individual. That is usually the wrong frame. For a married couple, Social Security is a household machine, not a personal machine. One spouse's claiming decision changes the cash flow picture of the entire family. And in many cases, it changes the survivor's standard of living years later. This is where the next named mechanism comes in. I call it the survivor shield. A lower earning spouse may be entitled to a spousal benefit worth up to half of the higher earner's primary insurance amount, subject to timing rules and reductions if claimed early. But the truly powerful piece is survivor protection. When one spouse dies, the surviving spouse does not keep both benefits. The survivor generally keeps the higher of the two. That means the higher earner's claiming decision does not just affect his or her own retirement income. It often sets the size of the income floor the surviving spouse may one day live on alone. If the higher earner delays and builds that check up, the survivor shield gets stronger. If the higher earner claims early and locks in a smaller check, the shield gets smaller too. That is why I get uneasy when couples make these decisions separately. One spouse says, "This is my benefit." Number, not really. In a long marriage, retirement cash flow is a team sport. Survivorship makes it a team sport whether people like it or not. The lower earner may claim earlier in some strategies. The higher earner may delay to maximize the eventual survivor benefit. There are variations, health considerations, tax considerations, and many household-specific details. But the principle is durable. If you are married, never evaluate Social Security in isolation. Evaluate it as a coordinated household income machine. Then we come to the quietest lever of all, and sometimes the most profitable one. Verify the record. This is the fifth name mechanism, and I call it the missing year leak. The Social Security Administration keeps a record of your earnings, but records are made by human systems, and human systems make mistakes. Missing wages, incorrectly matched years, understated earnings. These things happen. If that happens to you and you never catch it, the machine will calmly calculate a smaller lifetime benefit and never send you an apology. That is why I like simple discipline. Go to the Social Security website, open the record, look at the earnings history spot. Check it against tax records or WTUS, especially if anything looks wrong. This is not glamorous work. Neither is checking the title on a property before you buy it. But grown-ups who protect their future income do boring things on purpose. One missing high earning year can cost real money over the course of retirement. And the older you get, the more annoying it can become to reconstruct old records. So the sensible move is to inspect the machine before you need the output. Now, if you step back, the pattern becomes clear. 5 levers. Delay when it makes sense. Fill the 35-year record. Replace weak years with stronger years. Coordinate as a household, patch leaks in the earnings record. That is the visible part. But underneath those 5 levers is a deeper truth. And this is where many people miss the whole game. The real power of Social Security is not that it gives you money. The real power is that it can reduce the pressure on every other asset you own. A larger guaranteed inflation, protected monthly income, means you may need to pull less from your portfolio when markets are down. It means you may worry less about outliving assets. It means a surviving spouse may be less vulnerable. It means your withdrawal plan can be calmer. It means your spending may be more durable even when inflation behaves badly. I have spent a lifetime thinking about capital allocation, and in retirement, capital allocation becomes income allocation. The question is not just, how much do I have? The question is, how much of my future spending is protected by strong, durable, repeatable cash flow? That is why I take Social Security seriously. It is one of the few places where patience, planning, and arithmetic can buy you more protected income for life. And protected income matters. People love to talk about returns. Few love to talk about sleep. But the point of money is not applause. The point is stability, autonomy, and the ability to live according to your own values. A well-handled Social Security decision can improve all 3. Now let me press on something else that deserves your attention. A lot of people underestimate the role of health and household context. 2 people can have the same projected benefit and arrive at different correct answers. One couple has longevity in the family, enough bridge assets, and a large gap between spouses. Delay may be highly valuable. Another household has health problems, limited liquid savings, and immediate income needs. Earlier mid-range claiming may be perfectly rational. The disciplined move is not to copy someone else. S-age, the disciplined move is to understand the machine and then run your life through it, honestly. That honesty part matters because people lie to themselves in 2 directions. Some claim too early because they are impatient. Others delay automatically because they heard delay is always best, even when their own balance sheet and health picture argue otherwise. I do not admire either mistake. I admire rationality. I admire people who can look at a decision without ego and say, here is what this machine does. Here is what our household needs. Here is how we build the strongest lifetime income floor with the least regret. That is adult thinking. Here is another way to frame it. If you had the chance to buy more inflation, protected lifetime income from a very high quality source, would you at least study the terms carefully? Of course you would. That is exactly what this is. When a healthy high earner delays from full retirement age to 70, that person is often increasing one of the safest income streams in the retirement plan. When a worker with only 31 years on the record chooses to keep working and replace zeros, that person is often repairing a weak machine. When a couple coordinates so the higher earner builds the largest survivor check possible, they are not gaming the system. They are doing family capital allocation. And when somebody checks the earnings record and corrects an error, they are doing something even more basic. They are refusing to accept a silent leak in a machine they may depend on for decades. I like people who refuse silent leaks. Now, because I want this to be practical, let me show you the decision protocol I would use if I were helping someone think clearly. First, get the statement and understand what the current full retirement age estimate actually is. Second, look at the earnings history and count the years. Not vaguely count them. How many real years are there? Are there zeros? Are there obviously weak years that current work could replace? Third, separate the household question from the personal question. If married, what are both projected benefits? Which spouse is the higher earner? What does the survivor likely live on if one spouse dies first? Fourth, examine the bridge. If the plan is to delay claiming, what pays the bills in the meantime? Cash portfolio withdrawals, part-time work, pension income, a spouse's income. Delay is easier when the bridge is real instead of imaginary. Fifth, run the health test, not the wishful thinking test. The honest one: family longevity, current condition, major medical issues, work stress, quality of life, all of it. Sixth, inspect the tax and withdrawal interaction. A stronger Social Security floor can change portfolio withdrawal pressure later. A weaker one may force larger withdrawals from financial assets. Seventh, make the decision as an owner, not a spectator. That last line matters to me. Too many people approach Social Security as spectators. They sit in front of the machine and wait for it to tell them what to do. Owners do the opposite. Owners learn the rules, inspect the inputs, and make deliberate choices about the output. That is how adults handle durable financial machines. Let me give you a concrete mental picture. Imagine two retirees who each reach full retirement age with the same projected primary amount. The first one claims immediately because he is tired of waiting and likes the idea of getting his money back. The second one studies the household balance sheet, sees that there is enough in savings and portfolio income to bridge a few more years, and delays. The second retiree is not being clever for the sake of it. He is increasing an inflation-protected stream that may support both him and, later, a surviving spouse over a long retirement that may amount to tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of additional protected cash flow depending on lifespan and household circumstances. The first retiree may still be fine, but fine is not the same as optimal, and I have never built a life around fine. There is one more subtle point I want you to hold on to. A bigger Social Security check does not only help poor planners, it helps disciplined planners too. Why? Because it gives them optionality. Optionality matters in every capital allocation problem. In retirement, optionality is the ability to spend without panicking when markets fall. It is the ability to reduce sequence of returns risk. It is the ability to let equities recover because the monthly spending burden is not resting entirely on portfolio sales. Guaranteed income gives the rest of the plan breathing room. That is why I would urge you not to treat Social Security as a bureaucratic footnote. Treat it like a bond you cannot buy anywhere else on equal terms. Treat it like a machine with a few very important dials. Treat it with the seriousness you would give any other valuable lifetime financial asset, because that is what it is. Now let me tell you the mistake I see most often. People wait until they are about to claim before they begin to learn. That is late. Not always fatal, but late. The best time to understand the machine is years before you flip the switch. That gives you time to replace weak years, time to catch record errors, time to coordinate with a spouse, time to decide whether delay is realistic, and time to build the cash bridge if delay turns out to be a strong move. You do not buy insurance after the fire. You do not inspect the bridge after you start crossing it. And you do not study Social Security seriously the week before you claim if you had the chance to improve the machine years earlier. This is not complicated because the math is impossible. It is complicated because most people never slow down long enough to think. Do that thinking. Now, if you have fewer than 35 years on the record, do not wave that away. If your current earnings are meaningfully higher than earlier years, do not wave that away. If you are married, do not talk about your benefit as if you live alone. If your record has errors, do not assume somebody else will fix them. And if you are healthy, financially flexible, and dismissing the value of delay without running the numbers, do not pretend you are being practical. You may be selling a wonderful lifetime asset too cheaply simply because patience is uncomfortable. I have made a career out of understanding the value of patience. Patience works in common stocks, patience works in business building. And in the right household, patience works in Social Security too. But patience is only useful when it is informed. Blind delay is no better than blind claiming. The goal is not to worship any one strategy. The goal is to understand the machine so well that when you finally choose, you are choosing with clarity instead of fear. That is the standard. Clarity over slogans, household thinking over individual thinking, lifetime cash flow over short-term emotion, protected income over impulsive decisions. When you do that, the whole subject becomes much calmer. You stop asking what age is everybody else claiming and start asking the only question that matters. How do I build the strongest, most durable, most rational income machine for the life we are actually going to live? That is the right question, and it leads to a final test I want to leave you with. If you are within 10 years of claiming, sit down tonight and ask yourself this: am I about to activate one of the most important income machines in my life with real understanding, or am I drifting toward a permanent decision because somebody on the internet sounded confident? That question is sharper than it sounds, because one path leads to ownership, the other leads to regret. And when the check arrives every month for the next 20 or 30 years, you will live inside the consequences of whichever path you choose. So do not treat this lightly, do not drift, do not borrow somebody else's certainty. Learn the machine, inspect the levers, protect the survivor, fix the leaks, and when the time comes to flip the switch, do it like an owner who understands exactly what he is turning on.